Year 11s, we're going to be looking at the excretory system. So this is our system. In our case, we're not looking at the digestive part of the excretory system. That's part of the digestive system, when it comes out as feces and all that sort of stuff. Our excretory system is related to our kidneys and our urine and our bladder. So the main organ involved in the excretory system is the kidney. This is what filters our blood and what gets rid of the excess water and the nutrients that our liver doesn't need to process. So this is about removing particularly metabolic wastes, or almost exclusively metabolic wastes. The kidney is the major part of the excretory system. It removes those metabolic wastes while also helping to maintain hydration. The structural and functional unit of the kidney, so that is the main component of the kidney, the main physical component, the structural unit, as well as the main functional unit, the part that actually does the thing, is called the nephron. The nephrons consist of a few main features: the Bowman's capsule, which is the first part of what we call the tubules, which are what receive the filtrate, the glomerulus, which is a network of capillaries, and then finally a long tubule which drains into a collecting duct, which eventually drains into the ureter. The way that the kidney actually receives the blood that it filters is it takes it diverted directly from the aorta via what's called the renal artery. The blood taken diverted from the aorta via the renal artery hasn't been deoxygenated. This is not blood that's been through the body. This is been through the systemic pathway. This is blood that is fresh from the heart directly to the kidneys. Now, roughly 20% of all of our blood at any one point in time is driven through this renal artery. So our kidneys rotate through our blood pretty efficiently. The excess water, any unwanted solutes, drain into the renal pelvis, which is a large tubule at the base of the kidney, and which fills the bladder directly, and these are eventually expelled. Now, the critical wastes that the kidney deals with are these metabolic wastes. That means they're the wastes that the body itself produces. This is very different to the wastes that the body expels through feces. Those are non-metabolic wastes. They're the leftover rubbish that our body doesn't want from our food. Very different to what the kidney deals with, which is the wastes that our body actually produces itself. So, a couple of anatomical problems or anatomical issues that we have here. So what I have behind me is just this diagram, just simplified. So we have our kidney here, roughly kidney bean shaped. There's a reason why it's called the kidney bean. We have the renal artery coming in red. So this is fresh blood coming directly into the kidney. We have the renal vein, so that's the blood that has gone through the kidney, been filtered, and is coming back out. Inside the kidney itself, we have the central part, which is called the renal medulla or the renal medulla. This is where the tubules themselves are found. So this is where the filtrate, where the blood that's been driven into the Bowman's capsule actually ends up and then drains into the pelvis and then into the ureter. We also have the renal cortex, which is the outer part of the kidney. This is where the glomeruli are found. So this is where the majority of the blood vessels are found. When we do our whole animal dissection, you can try to snip the kidneys out and have a look at them, just cut them straight in half and see what you can actually see here with the cortex and everything involved. We then have this draining into what the pelvis, the renal pelvis here, draining eventually to the ureter, which then goes to the bladder. So the complex of the system, the organ system here, the excretory system, is made up of the kidneys, the bladder, and depending on what sex you are, it will depend on which organs and which tissues are actually involved in actually expelling the urine. But kidneys, 2 of them, bladder, 1 of them, ureter draining both kidneys directly into the bladder. So this is our anatomical representation that we have here. You've got it already on the slide, so don't necessarily need to copy it down unless you find that you're more of a visual learner. What we do have as well is the nephron here, so I'm just going to hop over to the other side. Now again, we've got it on the slides, and there's a lot more detail on the slides than there is here. This is just so that I can talk through it a bit more easily, what we've got up on the board here. So we have the glomerulus. Now the glomerulus is called a capillary network. On both my diagram and the diagram on the slide there, you see that it's just as if it's one capillary. That's not an accurate representation. This is a bed of capillaries, a network of capillaries. So there are dozens, potentially hundreds of capillaries that are permeating, that are involved in this process. And they are surrounded by what's called the Bowman's capsule. This is the start of the tubule. So this is the first part. The Bowman's capsule receives 30% of the 20% of the plasma that's in the blood, that's in the glomerulus. 20% of that plasma crosses into the Bowman's capsule and becomes filtrate. So the liquid part of the cell, the plasma, the liquid part of the blood, sorry, the plasma crosses the capillary membrane, crosses the tubule membrane, enters the tubule and becomes filtrate. So now we're actually going to filter this blood. Now filtering means that we remove some things. In our case, in our body's case, we also add some things. Now in the plasma, there's oxygen that's been dissolved, there's glucose, there's carbon dioxide in some cases, there's going to be salt, so there'll be sodium, there'll be potassium, there'll be other things that will get that will have been there because of a variety of different reasons as the body has processed all of this. So the filtrate is full of everything that the plasma has. Some of those things, like glucose, the body wants. Salt, the body wants sodium, the body wants potassium. So they get reabsorbed. With those comes water. So a huge amount of the water that gets pushed across through the glomerulus into the Bowman's capsule as filtrate, a huge amount of the water, the majority of the glucose, the majority of the salts, that gets reabsorbed. And then the tissues surrounding this the Bowman's capsule and the tubules secrete substances, wastes, things like urea, things like creatine, things that the body doesn't actually need anymore, things that it wants to get rid of. So these metabolic wastes are secreted into the filtrate. So we have two processes happening here. We have reabsorption, sorry, which is where the body actually takes back the things it needs, glucose, water, salts. And then we have secretion, where the body is pushing into the filtrate things it doesn't want. Wastes, urea and creatine are the two main ones that we're considering here. That then pushes all the way through the tubule, down the descending tubule, very creatively named, and then up into the ascending tubule, again, very creatively named. And then it drains into this collecting duct here and goes towards the ureter. Now, we have millions of nephrons in our kidneys, and so all of the volume, it might be a tiny amount in each nephron, but in the millions of nephrons that we have, we're filtering a vast volume of our blood, which is why eventually our bladder fills. A couple of times a day, maybe 3 times a day, our bladder fills and we need to expel the waste. We need to expel the urine. This is our excretory process. The whole point of it is to get out things that we don't actually need. A couple of situations where there might be disease. So if we have an excess amount of glucose in our blood, in our blood, which is then going to be picked up in our urine, it might indicate diabetes. If we have too much salt in our blood, there'll be too much salt in our urine. And that might indicate some kind of dietary problem. I mean, I don't know. I'm sort of coming up with these on the spot. The glucose one definitely indicates diabetes. If we have very concentrated urine, so very yellow urine, then we're looking at a problem with our hydration, that we're dehydrated. So because our kidneys represent, although they're not exactly the same, they have a good indication of what's happening in our blood supply. They can also indicate quite a lot about our general health, our general well-being. So they're a really, really important organ, and the excretory system is an incredibly important organ system. If it's not working effectively, if we're not able to secrete enough wastes into our urine, then those wastes are going to build up. Kidney disease. We're not able to get rid of our wastes. And that might be because there's some sort of cardiovascular problem, the blood supply is poor. It might be that there's some issue with our kidney itself, that it's not able to secrete, or perhaps it's not even able to reabsorb. Kidney disease is a massive problem, particularly for people who have things like diabetes, where they have a very high concentration of glucose constantly running through their food tract. It has a massive impact on our overall health. Outside of the obvious, where our bodies are increasing the amount of toxins that we've got. Alright, now that brings us to the end of this video. It's quite short. We have the kidney, our overall anatomical structure of the kidney with the medulla, with the cortex, with the arteries and the veins coming in and out. We then have our nephron, where we have our glomerulus, our capillary bed, the Bowman's capsule, the filtrate moving through the nephron, or through the tubules, reabsorption and secretion happening. There have been a couple of videos. Click on the videos. One of them is quite long, about 6 or 7 minutes long. I think the other one is reasonably short. So use your time well in those, please. Again, year 11s, at the moment when I'm recording these, we're in week 5. I'm still not getting many questions, either emails or in class. I know you have them. I know that there are problems that you're encountering that you're not coming to me with. You really need to be asking those questions. Sending emails, asking in class, coming to tutoring after school, it doesn't really matter. If you're not asking the questions, I have no idea that you've got the problems. And I just can't help you. So please make sure you're doing that.